Okay, this is volume 6, and I call it Toilet. I called it Toilet Bowl and Art. God will know God's self one way or the other. And since my stomach is churning right now because it's 6:53 in the morning, March 14th, I'm eating what you call God's candy. All right? This is dried fruit, God's candy. And synchronistically, upon my completion, my last can of root beer. And with that, I also learned how to stream from my phone to my TV. And so I took a picture of my flat that I made, completed in this aura or era, both, of my completion. And so I streamed it to my TV, and look. I did also send it to the printer along with a picture of Sport, which I'm going to make a flat. I think now I'm going to make a flat of all my dogs. Okay? Because I have pictures for all of them. I have to find them, back through all the pictures I've taken. But I know I have them. And it just popped up on my phone, like in the upper corner, how it does, at least with an Apple phone. A picture of Sport, and it was such a good picture. I said, no, I gotta make a flat of Sport too. These actually cost quite a bit in epoxy material, and it's a lot of work. And speaking of a lot of work, I hope you understand that even though what I'm reading only takes about a half an hour to read one of these little books I wrote, it takes me a lot longer than that to write them. Okay, because I have to think about what I'm going to say, and just writing itself is a lot slower than reading. When I was in undergraduate school, I was taking my, speech or preaching class. I think we only had one, but in that class, I learned that, for speaking in public and a presentation, I was instructed that you need to spend like an hour in preparation for every minute you speak. So, I spoke, a few 20-minute sermons in that class. And so for each one, I spent about 20 hours. Okay? Writing it. And when it was videotaped, and that was the first time I ever seen myself speaking in videotape. And when I seen myself on the videotape speaking, man, I thought, is that me? Do I look like that? It was an awakening. So that's like looking in the mirror, in fact, it was even different than looking in the mirror, because looking in the mirror, well, that's one thing, but when you see yourself in a presentation, that's another thing altogether. And but I think I might point out in this book, or maybe another one, that we are mirrors to each other. Okay? And I stress, the importance of conversation. So just with that preface, I'm going to read this here. Toilet Bowl and Art. Okay? I didn't actually get to that till the end, but I wrote it before I wrote this. I wrote that on the cover, because I knew I needed to get to that point, and I really didn't get to that point until the very end. But I did, and I filled up every page, and it just worked out. Like, I fitted everything in. It was kind of in my mind, in the room that I had allotted to me in these little 5x7 notebooks. So, volume 6, and let me just take one drink first. Volume 6. Friday, March 6th. Yeah, I might not have wrote the right dates on here. No, because this is oh, okay, no. No, it wasn't March 6th. It was March 16th. No, it's March 14th now. Look, this is my last one, all right? I don't know why I wrote March 6th, but I don't know. Sometimes I might get mixed up about things. I'm not sure. But, okay, I wrote Friday, March 6th, 2026, but this is my 6th one, okay? Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Matthew 12:36. Dear Isaac. Now, this is going to be a longer one because I knew it was, and I wrote most of it without spacing between lines. Dear Isaac, I much prefer the point of view paragraph to the stream of consciousness. However, both are used and loved by me. I give you both at times. The point of view paragraph is topical. I like to study topics as you and as I do. In a stream of consciousness, we knit together the disparate elements from both our hearts and minds. In the point of view paragraph, which may be redundant for me to say based on your education, nevertheless, I say it for the purpose of clarity, for the laying of groundwork, the foundation of all discourse. We both can write from here or from there. When all is said and done, we hope to achieve some, if not all, continuity. We hope for and work toward continuity so we can be understood. Understanding is a beautiful thing in all various forms. The understanding from mind and from heart, intellectual and spiritual. We go through evolutions of self-expression. 1 year or 1 day, we may express ourselves one way or another. When speaking to one audience, we don't provide the detail of a point of view paragraph because that may be an insult to their intelligence, repeating the unnecessary and wasting their precious time. With a stranger, however, we may establish our definitions. The audience is always considered. Consideration is lovely. When I first began reading your essay, I wondered who you were writing for. Who was your audience? Inasmuch as I am as you invited me to be a part of your audience. I know your audience has within it people who will judge your work and consider it for publication. Hearing and conversing with your audience keeps us relevant. The task in life and discourse, as I see it, is to maintain relevancy. We have to be relevant. Relevancy and continuity come easier for some than others. Sigmund Freud saw the fragmentation of the psyche. I misspelled psyche. I put an I instead of an E at the end. as the matrix for all psychomaladies and illnesses, dysfunctions, and neuroses. He is considered, after all, the father of psychoanalysis. The layers of our psyche go so deep, stream of consciousness is required to get at the deeper layers because we bury our hidden layers beneath the or behind the walls and foundations of our adaptations, prejudices, assumptions, excuses, revisions, and so much more. The perennial drive is to get to the bottom of it, the root, unquote, quote unquote, cause. To get there, we must excavate layer after layer until we arrive at the premise, and from there we rebuild our structure again and again. Sometimes we find that when we have gotten to the bottom of the problem, it was not even the bottom at all. So we continue in our superficial life thinking it is real. The important thing in our life is to keep revisiting and excavating and delivering the work in progress. We are all works in progress. Who we are today, how we feel today, based on our orientations, what we see today, and no, will not be the same tomorrow. So we continue line upon line, block upon block, revision upon revision, until we get it right, square and plumb. Then we realize it, quote unquote, was never meant to be square and plumb, as the illusion would have it, because in our advances we realize we cannot draw a straight line when everything is cyclical and in motion, so we satisfy ourselves with trajectory. The cosmic order is our reality. Stasis may work on Earth, but it doesn't in time. We are on Earth in time. The elemental subjects of Einstein's revolve around time, space, and trajectory, energy, mass, and natural order of things. When confronted with the new, at that time, the new study, in Einstein's time, at that time, the new studies in quantum mechanics, he found that to be spooky action at a distance. It is, by definition, the instantaneous connection between entangled quantum particles, and the scientific position is that things are not even real until they are observed. Then Einstein said that his greatest blunder was his introduction to the cosmological constant into his equations of general relativity, to force a static universe model, ignoring his own theories, prediction of a dynamic one, ignoring his own theories, prediction of a dynamic one. He considered it a fudge factor after Hubble proved the universe is expanding. I've just returned from the room. I have all my old cassette tapes, only to find my cassettes have a layer of dust on them, so the tape I was looking for cannot be seen without me cleaning all 100 or so of them first. I was looking for a lecture from a renowned humanistic psychologist whose name I can't remember, writing and lecturing about the automata, the automaton man. There was something in your writing that led me on my abandoned quest. I turned my attention forthwith to the internet from my phone. First, I've seen Erich Fromm, whose work I have read as in a book I gave you, The Art of Loving. But I knew the fella I was looking for had an A in the first letter of his name. His first or his last name had an A in it. I can't remember. Or last name. Fromm was not it. Then I came across a publication from Mind magazine called Mind, 22 pages long, with the print on my phone so small it was difficult to pursue, but I did read it some. It was the work of our beloved William James. James' essay style reminded me of your own. I will suffice to brief bits from the first page as my mind was satisfied hearing some of the self-same words you used in your essay, and referring, among others, to Professor Huxley, who I had been listening to and mentioned to you regarding Brave New World. I don't know if I wrote another one or not. It seems like I didn't remember reading Huxley in these last ones, but I thought I did. But anyway, regarding Brave New World. Everyone is now acquainted with the and so I didn't give excerpts. I actually just read. I just actually copied and wrote you the first page or so, from Huxley, from William James' work. Okay, and so I said excerpts, but as I was going, I just gave one straight thing, and I think that is better for the point. And somewhat of kind of a lesson I'm bringing to you from my perspective. Okay, this is William James from page 1, the beginning. Okay. He says, and this comes from siteclassics.york yorku.ca. All right. And I found it by trying to look under automata or automaton, because I think it was Carl Rogers. I don't know why I was thinking of A is because automata. Okay, I think Carl Rogers was the one. He was the one that I was trying to think of. All right, I had a cassette tape of one of his lectures, and he was talking about that a long time ago, okay? Like in the 1990s. Everyone is now acquainted with the conscious automaton theory, to which Professor Huxley gave such publicity in his Belfast address, which the late Mr. D.A. Spalding punctiliously made the pivot of all his book notices in Nature, which Professor Clifford fulminated as a dogma essential to salvation in a lecture on body and mind, but which found its earliest and ablest exposition in Mr. Hodgson's magnificent work, The Theory of Practice. The theory maintains that in everything outward we are pure material machines. Feeling is a mere, and I underscored that because you use the word mere a lot, M-E-R-E, mere collateral product of our nervous processes, unable to react upon them any more than a shadow reacts on the steps of a traveler whom it accompanies. Inert, influential, a simple passenger in the voyage of life, it is allowed to remain on board, but not to touch the helm or handle the rigging. The theory also maintains that we are in error to suppose that our thoughts awaken each other by inward congruity or rational necessity, that disappointed hopes cause sadness, premises, conclusions. The feelings are merely juxtaposed in order without mutual cohesion, because the nerve process to which they severally correspond awaken each other in that order. It may seem strange that this latter part of the theory should be held by writers who, like Professor Huxley, have openly expressed their belief in Hume's doctrine of causality. That doctrine asserts that the causality we seem to find between the terms of a physical chain of events is an illegitimate outward projection of the inward necessity by which we feel each thought to sprout out of its customary antecedent. Strip the string of necessity from between ideas themselves, and it becomes hard indeed for a Humean to say how the notion of causality ever was born at all. This, however, is an argumentum and ad hominem which need not detain us. The theory itself is an inevitable consequence of the extension of the notion of reflex action to the higher nervous centers. Professor Huxley starts from a decapitated frog which performs rational seeming acts, although probably it has no consciousness, and passing up the hemispheres of man, concludes that the rationality of their performances can owe nothing to the feelings that coexist with it. This is the inverse of Mr. Liu's procedure. He starts from the hemispheres and, finding their performances apparently guided by feelings, concludes when he comes to the spinal cord that feeling, though latent, must still be there to make it act so rationally. Clearly, such arguments as these may mutually eat each other up to all eternity. The reason why the writers we speak of venture to dogmatize as they do on this subject seems due to a sort of philosophical faith, bred, like most faiths, from an aesthetic demand. Mental and physical events are, on all hands, admitted to present the strongest contrast in the entire field of being. The chasm which yawns between them is less easily bridged over by the mind than any interval we know. Why then not call it an absolute chasm, and say not only that the two worlds are different, but that they are independent? Question mark, This gives us the comfort of all simple and absolute formulas, and it makes each chain homogeneous to our consideration when talking of nervous tremors and bodily action. We may feel secure against intrusion from an irrelevant mental world. When, on the other hand, we speak of feelings, we may, with equal consistency, use terms always of one denomination, and nerves and never be annoyed by what Aristotle calls slipping into another kind. Okay, let me read that again. We may, with equal consistency, use terms always of one denomination, and never be annoyed by what Aristotle calls slipping into another kind. The desire on the part of men educated in laboratories not to have their physical reasonings mixed up with such incommensurable factors as feeling is certainly very strong. Nothing is commoner than to hear them speak of conscious events as something so essentially vague and shadowy as even doubtfully to exist at all. I have heard a most intelligent biologist say, "It is half time for our scientific men to protest against the recognition of any such thing as consciousness in a scientific investigation." In a word, feeling constitutes the unscientific half of existence, and anyone who enjoys calling himself a scientist will be too happy to purchase an untrammeled homogeneity of terms in the studies of his predilection, at the slight cost of admitting a dualism which, in the same breath that it allows to mind and independent status of being, banishes it to a limbo of causal inertness from whence no intrusion or interruption on his part need ever be feared. But common sense also may have its aesthetic demands, and among them may be a craving for unity. The spectacle of an ultimate and inexplicable dualism in the nature of things may be as unsatisfying as the obligation to calculate with heterogeneous terms two aspects, and this is probably German, neming adspiciente, seem uncalled for. One may well refuse until absolutely overpowered by the evidence to believe that the world contains items which in no wise influence their neighbors, whose existence or non-existent need so far as the remainder go be taken into no account. It is a smoother and more harmonious thought to imagine all the items of the world without exception as interlocked in bonds of action and reaction and forming a single dynamic whole. And now who shall decide between such rival aesthetic needs? A priori to shrink from a chasm between the objects of one's contemplation is as respectable as to dislike heterogeneity in the factors of one's reasoning operations. The truth is then that neither aesthetic motives nor ostensible reasons entitled to decide between the conscious automaton theory and the theory of common sense. Both alike are conceptions of the possible, and for anyone dogmatically to affirm the truth of either is, in the present state of our knowledge, an extremely unscientific procedure. The question for us then is, can we get light from any facts hitherto ignored in the discussion? Since the direct evidence of our living feeling is ruled out of court as mendacious, can we find circumstantial evidence which will incline the balance either way and save us from the dreary strife of prejudice and prepossession? I think we can, and propose in the remainder of this article to show that this presumptive evidence wholly favors the efficacy. Maybe they use the word efficacy, but like just efficacy of conscious automaton theory would be useless. Wholly favors the efficacy. It must be an efficacy. Efficacy. Well, efficacy of conscious of. Maybe I missed the word the. The conscious automaton theory would be useless. It follows that if we discover the utility of consciousness, we shall overthrow that theory. Our problem, consequently, is of what use to a nervous system is superadded consciousness, which is kind of, AI. Well, this was written a long time ago, like 18 something. But it's relevant, okay? All right, superadded consciousness. Can a brain which has it function have it function better than a brain without it? Superadded consciousness. Without it? And to answer this question, we must know first the defects of the brain, and secondly, the peculiar powers of its mental correlate. Since consciousness is presumably at its minimum in creatures whose nervous system is simple, and at its maximum in the hypertrophied cerebrum of man, the natural inference is that as an organe de perfection, perfection nament, it is most needed where the nervous system is highly evolved, and the form of our first question takes is, what are the characteristic of the highly evolved nervous centers? Okay, back in the day they said centres. Okay, I wrote centres. Because that's what, how words change. The article says and this is a title, Classics in the History of Psychology. Okay, this came from Classics in the History of Psychology. William James wrote this, and it goes on for 20 more pages. He wrote it in 1879. I didn't think he was alive that long ago, but I guess he was. 1879. Think of that. The great conversation continues, and I'm happy you are part of it. I would like to get back to my dream and what dreaming says to me, but first, the multiple problems at hand supported in your essay and underscored by me as I see them. I would probably do well by finishing James' paper, but I don't need to. It would probably pack the closet of my mind so that I could not find anything. When I shut my eyes, I see flowers, perhaps because I'm writing on them. Okay, I'm writing on this, flat, with your picture. That's what I used to write on. I got bit up by a mosquito or two. I didn't even hear or see the bugger, as I was so intent on juxtaposing the style and some of its synchronistic content with your own, after reflecting on the dynamics of communication and the parallel process I have gone through as I multitask the creation of Sally's flat with the evolution of my reply to your essay. The making of the flat is a ritual, a spiritual ritual for me. This is the part of my humanity AI cannot replace. Quote, the great conversation is defined as the ongoing process of writers and thinkers referencing, building on, and refining the work of their predecessors. And I should put another quotation mark, okay? That's what the great conversation entails. My inclination is toward what matters and toward keeping it real, utilizing the KISS principle of keeping it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. KISS. I believe Jesus gives us profound example of this as he scorns hypocrisy, the hypocrisis, in which artifice is found. Almost sounds like a Greek god, artifice. It reminds me of a Greek god, it seems, called Artifice. But anyway, I'm talking about artifice, as fake and kind of like art. In fact, maybe it was. We can't strain at a gnat and swallow a camel, or get lost in the squabble of debate over every jot and tittle. Jesus said the entire body of the Torah law can be summed up in one line: love God and love people. This fulfills the law. He was not concerned about religious and pharisaical ritual and practice he considered irrelevant. For Jesus, his erudite, masterful understanding took him to the Rizzo. Your Rizzo use, root. He said he did not come but for one purpose, and that was to seek and save the lost. Imagine that. What could be more relevant? Jesus also gives us example to follow, aka his ritual. His ritual was so holy, the broken lady in the crowd only wanted to touch the hem of his garment. She said, if I can touch the hem of his garment, the hem of the garment had to do with God's commandments. Each tassel represented a commandment, and they put these tassels on the hem like a rosary for Catholics. So the hem of his garment. So in essence, what the broken lady was saying by her own expressed thought and action, that in bold letters, I want to touch God's law, our ritual, the way Jesus does. I believe in Jesus' use of ritual, how Jesus keeps and interprets the law, etc. The woman who touched the hem of Jesus' garment did so because she's seen the efficacy of Jesus' Rizalic, and I made that word up, Rizalic orientation, and it mattered. She's seen the meaning behind the law, the spiritual behind the material. I do appreciate the introduction to Rizology, another word I made up. I don't know if it's a real word or not, but Rizology, Aileen and yourself have introduced. LOL. It is very useful to me now, as you can see. Well, just as William James set forth the dilemma, and then after placing it in the context of the Great Conversation, he introduced what he believed to be a working answer. I was happy to read James' essay, because I found his style and format much the same as your own. James was a master, and I was also happy to provide it for you, since I found it as one would find an obscure treasure. One of the main points in your discussion revolved around the understanding derived from a sociological, psychological, ontological, and religious ethnicity in the aftermath of AI superintelligence. You spoke of it as a cyborg god. I want to add and underscore this pervasive species, if you will, a mutation of humanity. Now we know from the superhero mythology that the mutants did do good, but we are at the precipices of the myth exposes. So I take a brief synopsis from YouTube headline. Okay. We are at the precipice. The myth exposes, okay? The myth of superheroes. The mutants. So I take a brief synopsis from YouTube regarding AI. Okay, now I'm just going to read. I wrote down, I just went on YouTube, okay? I looked up AI, actually AI mutation, okay? And I just put a lot before me, okay? I'm just going to read all the headlines. YouTube is using AI to alter content. AI changes the way doctors treat their patients. AI is changing the film industry. AI changing teaching. AI is changing software engineering. AI is changing farming. AI is changing banks. The rise of AI in factories. AI is changing gaming tech. ChatGPT and AI agents. AI is changing the human race. Careers at risk for AI impacts. How AI is changing warfare. AI changing enterprise. Changing the world with AI. The race to create the ultimate AI global eye. The use of AI is changing the human brain. AI is transforming the world of work. AI is about to transform the world's economy. How AI is changing art for creatives. AI and deep fakes are changing politics. AI is writing the rules of war. Putin said, whoever leads an AI will rule the world. AI is changing shopping. AI is changing manufacturing. AI revolution. AI is changing the job market. AI is changing the world of theoretical physics. AI CEO explains new behavior AIs are showing. I'm changing how I manage my money because of AI. AI 2027, a realistic scenario of AI takeover. AI changing how I invest. AI revolutionizing medicine. AI 2027, is this how AI might destroy humanity? 7 life-changing uses of AI. AI is mutating. We don't know what it is doing. How AI is changing the church. AI is changing the news. AI scientists think there's a monster inside ChatGPT. AI is starting religions and writing death threats. It begins, and AI tried to escape the lab. Will AI destroy humanity? AI singularity moment just hit. Molt book, AI behavior freaks. And I understand Molt book is like AI social media. AI did what experts warned. It killed for the first time. Unknown threats of AI and what it means to be human. No attachment to DNA. AI went. AI won't replace you, but it might change how you think. AI just translated a newly found Sumerian tablet. How AI is killing the value of college degree. How AI parasite will consume mankind. Trump, Iran, Israel is the first AI war. AI is changing our language. AI understands too much. AI created its own religion. Physics just swallowed AI. And the list goes on. I'm going to break now, but conclude by asserting the urgency your essay sparks in my soul is the necessity of not losing touch with the elemental aspects of our nature. As Bob Dylan wrote, and as I dedicated to Arden, my Bamba Rose, stay forever young. So now, March 14th, 1:49 a.m., which is actually today. I think, yeah, today. That's when I got up. I just woke from a well-needed sleep. It was deep and restful. I dreamed, as I did the day before yesterday, of my friend Cecil Medina, who I haven't spoken to since the 8th grade. But there we were, working together again. I mentioned it in a video clip I did for you, along with how I defaced or sanded down Sally and mine's flat. It iterated how the cycle of life repeats over and over in evolution as we grow like a big oak tree. Every year of growth, onward and upward, outward, we develop a new ring in the circumference of our trunk, and upon reflection we realize each ring represented a year in the cycle of life, and it is around and around we go. It is not a straight line from here to there. I was thinking on how I have returned to the God of my childhood, as I recalled in my interruption or interlude when writing in Volume 5, when I said, I have returned, and did not follow it with From the Store. But my mom's Mary John Wilkins song played in my head. There to with, I went with it, etc. This should be a new paragraph. It is not the early teaching that is elementary, my dear Watson. Teaching that has captured my heart, love, and interest. It is my elemental experience, not elementary, elemental experience. My experience in the elemental aspect, this aspect which formed my being. I am human. You know, I say to my dogs, you are dog. I say to myself, I am human. I am man human. Here I stand. Yeah, here I stand. There is all that which is above, there is all that which is below. But here I stand, and there is nobody like me. That came from one of the stories from the Upanishads. Well, I was gazing into the toilet, it didn't come from the Upanishads. It came from Hindu writings, okay? Well, I was gazing into the toilet bowl yesterday morning, watching it flush because I have to jiggle the handle after the flush so the lever action frees up the stopper so it drops and allows the water to stop flowing. Otherwise, my water will continue running into the septic tank and out the drain field. But as the water begins to flush away the past burned up and assimilated aspects of our living lives, it circulates around the toilet bowl, cleaning the sides with centrifugal force, contained in the space and time of a toilet bowl flush. Centrifugal force was my first science demonstration or presentation in the 6th or 7th grade. I had to come up with something quick, and had read about it, perhaps at the direction of my Uncle John, or discovered it in the Great Conversation. I don't recall, but I took a 1-gallon ice cream bucket of water, filling it up at the sink in the classroom, and then, as performing magic, I started swinging it around and around, and none of the water spilled out of the bucket in circular motion, because the centrifugal force of motion made it stay in the bucket. But like in the toilet bowl, round and round it goes into the black hole flush, as seen in the universe, the ongoings of our experience in time and space, in cosmology, the cosmic order. You can hear the rooster crowing. In scientific law and inner reaches of outer space, our mythos, our cycles, our equations, the observations of the cycles of life in both plant and animal, all point to the elemental aspect of our being. And there in the field, in the middle way, between what's all that, or that all above, and what's that all below, here we stand, and there's nobody like us. The middle voice has to be, I skipped a page, has to be heard from the center. Okay, I skipped a page. I want to put a picture there. I'm going to put a picture of the flat. I didn't mean to skip a page. Has to be heard from the center of the cycle, the center of our consciousness, the center of our hearts and our consideration, the center which ties everything to the center point, the still point of it all. This is elemental. This is perennial. This is absolute. I ate lasagna before I went to sleep. When sleeping, I was talking to you on the phone, expressing how the lasagna pieces of cheese and ingredients were stuck to the sides of the pot, and so tasty, I picked them and ate them each. This is my dream. I picked them and ate them each, representative of the cycles of the gods, like the tassels on the hem of Jesus' garment, who the broken lady said, if I can touch them, I know I will be made whole again. Then Rip began pawing on me with her leg that is broken from a gunshot to the elbow, breaking it forever. But it is the elbow. The doctor told me the leg needed to be amputated. That's the leg, okay? She pawed at me with that front leg, and I woke to hear Joseph Campbell talking about the evolution embodied in the energy of the transcendent consciousness. And this was because in Mythos 2.3, called Our Eternal Selves, was playing on my TV when I was sleeping. Susan Sarandon gives the introduction to G's to T. Okay, it's supposed to say to Joe's lecture. It looks like G's is supposed to be Joe's. To Joe's lecture. The Christ idea and the Buddha are equivalent mythological symbols. The gods are projections of powers within us, not somewhere out there. To reduce God to a question of belief is to miss the point. The single God of the Christian tradition or the many gods of the Hindu religion are personifications of transcendent energy consciousness. Joe was using the practice of yoga to explain what this energy consciousness is. Joe started his presentation with a Hindu story from the Upanishads. I was listening to it in my state of dreaming, juxtaposing my conversation with you, my lasagna, the toilet bowl flushing, to produce the idea that in our evolution, no matter what happens, God will know God's self. Thus ends. From Toilet Bowl and Art. All right, love you, bye.